Forbidden Planet is one of the most famous science fiction films of the 1950s. It introduced Robbie the Robot, and yes, that is a younger Leslie Nielsen as the ship's captain. In many ways, it feels like a precursor to the original Star Trek series, so let's see how it holds up in 2026. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together to talk about a movie watch this week. It's that simple. And on today's episode, we are doing a winner from a Patreon vote. There was 3 50s movies up for vote, and the winner was Forbidden Planet. Arguably one of the more famous 50s movies in the sci-fi realm. Although arguably that may just be because the titles kind of lingered around, and there's actually an entire comic book chain in the UK called Forbidden Planet.
I think it's in the US as well. It's in New York City.
One of them's international and is in the US. Interesting fact, the reason why there's 2 Forbidden Planets is because it was 2 guys who owned it and they had a falling out. So the second one is Forbidden Planet International and the original one's just Forbidden Planet.
Gotcha.
I only discovered this because once upon a time looking for the website, got very confused as to why there was 2 very different websites with basically the same name.
I mean, I type in Forbidden Planet and maybe Google is looking into my search history and knows that I'm into comic books, but that's the first result and the movie is second.
Yeah, you need to put movie or 1956 or whatever to get the movie. But yeah, so this is a classic. It's loosely based on a Shakespeare story. Mm-hmm. The Tempest being the one. Now, I've never read or watched any version of The Tempest, so I don't really know how much of it is from The Tempest. I'd be curious to know.
I wish I could fill in the gaps for you there, but Tempest is one of my blank spots. I am aware enough of the overarching plot to see the similarities, but I could not tell you, like, detail-oriented or character-wise, whether or not anything is, like, actually carried over.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of it's sci-fi stuff. I mean, obviously the idea of a recluse and his daughter, I'm sure that's probably in the original Shakespeare story, but I mean, beyond that, I'm not really entirely sure. So, but regardless, we'll start spoiler-free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch. You can rate us 5 stars in your podcast app if you're listening, and of course you can keep the show coming and support everything by supporting us in Patreon and getting some bonuses, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yeah, basic premise of Forbidden Planet is that a ship, sometime after 2200...
2200, yeah.
Yeah, it's after 2200, because they notably say that we got to the moon at the end of the 21st century, which was actually a really funny thing for them to say, because this is obviously a decade before, or a decade plus before the moon landing, and it's really funny that they didn't think we would make it for another 100 and something years.
I agree, but I will give them the benefit that they phrased it as men and women took spaceships to the moon, and the way they were phrasing it made it sound like for like population purposes, like colonization.
There was some wiggle room, is what you're saying there.
Yes, tiny little bit, and it's not going to stick, but they have it for another 70 years.
Yes, but they do say that by another 100 years, we will have been to every other planet in the solar system. So the clock's ticking, right? We've got about 80 years to pull that off and be on time.
Yes, and space exploration is in such a good place right now. It's absolutely going to get there.
But yeah, basically they're checking up on a colony that launched to a planet 20 years ago, and the captain of the ship is played by Leslie Nielsen, a young Leslie Nielsen, many years before Naked Gun, which is what I know him from. So honestly, I kept expecting him to do something funny like the entire time because he's Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, but the only reason that he works in Naked Gun and Airplane and stuff like that is because he was a serious actor beforehand. So this is his serious actor phase.
Yeah, but like I don't know his serious acting phase.
No, neither. Dude, when I saw his name in the credits and I was like, oh, okay, Leslie Nielsen. And the earliest I think I'd ever seen him it wasn't Towering Inferno. What was the other one about the fire? Was it just City on Fire?
City on Fire, yeah.
He was in that. And he still looked old. He still like had the white hair and everything like that by that point. So to see him in this, where he has like brown hair, it threw me for a loop, man. I was not ready for that.
Yeah, he's practically the main character. He's third build. He's not the one who gets the lead building, but he is basically the main character as the captain of the ship. So, yeah, they go there and discover that most of this colony doesn't exist anymore. It's really just one guy and his daughter that are left, and they've got a robot, and there's a whole thing to uncover, but we'll get into all that in spoilers. But, yes, basically the guy warns them, hey, don't land on the planet. I can't be held accountable of what will happen to you guys if you actually land here. You should go home. But of course, Frank Drebin's got his orders. He has to land on the planet, and plot proceeds. So that is the basic setup for Forbidden Planet. So I think the thing I'd want to keep in mind here is that a lot of this does feel a lot like original series Star Trek, but notably this is about a decade before original series Star Trek. So Star Trek probably has a lot of inspiration from this, or at the very least, this kind of paved the way for similar science fiction ideas.
That's something that I think, without spoiling my thoughts too hard on it, it's one of those movies where it's important because it was a trailblazer. It's important because it's something that feels like it's doing something that so many other things copied and took from later on, that looking back on it, if you don't know the order of releases on these things, it feels just stock standard. It feels like, oh, it's not doing anything too big, too impressive, anything like that. But you, like, keeping it in the context, it's so early on, it is trailblazing all of that.
Yeah, and their spaceship's basically just a classic-looking UFO, like the humanity's built, apparently. So, there's a lot of, like, old-school ideas in it like that. But yeah, so that's Forbidden Planet, and we'll get into it. Now, I actually had seen this before, a good maybe 15 years ago, but it had faded in my memory somewhat, so I didn't really remember a lot of where it went. I remember some broad ideas and some broad beats, but that was about it. So, getting kind of fresh. But, David, what did you think of Forbidden Planet?
So, I mean, yeah, basically what I just said there of the trailblazing aspect. But if I'm just judging the movie in its own right, I think that it moves at a very deliberate pace. And by that, I mean, I'm bored for a good, like, stretch of this movie. However, it is all in service of properly setting up the third act, which I think the third act does work. I think that it properly sets up everything it needs to. There is some cool effects. There's different things they do there. Without spoiling exactly what it's for, they do have a Walt Disney animator on staff, and I think his contributions are fantastic for this. And then, yeah, I think the entire ending of the movie really does just work as a capper to this, where for whatever boredom I felt earlier on, I think it really made it work by the end. So collectively, I think it's great. And then on top of that, practically the special effects, all that sort of stuff also looks great. It didn't feel like one of those cheesy B-movie sort of, oh, we're just like stringing along these things with clearly visible wire or something like that. No, they put in the effort. They made it feel very good for the era. And frankly, by the time I walked out of it, I was surprised with how much it worked for me in comparison to other 1950s films that we've done that feel just a little bit like cheaper on that side.
This feels like more of a genuine attempt to make I mean, they didn't have the term blockbuster yet, but it feels like they were trying to make something big. They put a lot of effort into how it looked and so on, to the point where the opening credits, and this isn't that uncommon for the era, but it tells you it's CinemaScope, which, I mean, to me, that's just an aspect ratio now, but at the time, that was a selling point, because TVs were a thing. They wanted to, like, do things that TVs couldn't do, and part of that was making the screen ultra-wide, so...
That's true. They also, in the opening credits, say, I think it was filmed in Eastman color or something like that, which the fact that you got to specifically point out the color type. Yeah,
I mean, Technicolor was a thing that was thrown around all the time back then. So, yeah, that was like where, at a certain point, they stopped crediting those things pretty much, aside from the very, very tail end of the scrolling credits where no one, it's like next to the copyright shit at the end. Where it's like, Panavision lenses and color by Kodak or color by whoever kind of thing.
No animals were harmed, filmed in Technicolor, whatever.
Yeah, it's not really news anymore. But yeah, it was a sales pitch thing at the time, and it was like it was kind of like a buzzword in the same way that today to try and sell TVs, like, hey, 4K HDR. It was kind of that for the era, for like, hey, go to the movies because you're seeing it in CinemaScope. So, I was actually saying this before we started, but the 50s are kind of a weird time because it's in that transition period where things like this aspect ratio were starting to be used, but not everyone was using them yet. There's a real mixture, there's a melting pot of aspect ratios being used. You've got 185, 166. This is 235 or 2400 to 1, and you've got the super wide ones, which is like 275 to 1, and like all of those things were being used. But still, some stuff was still 4:3 in cinemas, and some stuff was still certainly black and white, because this was during the era where the price of the film itself, the black and white film, is cheaper, so a low budget movie might actually make their movie in black and white just because it would save money rather than an artistic reason. It's different from today, of course. If someone makes a black and white movie in 2026, it's purely an artistic choice. There's nothing forcing them to do that now. But there was a time when that did matter. It made a difference, and that the 50s was kind of the big time where that was still a thing.
I feel like the pivot point now is if you actually shoot on film, that is we're doing this for like an artistic point or something like that, whereas everyone else will just shoot digital.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. Although I don't know if that one's is it's not like people were like oh, this new film's not shot in digital. This feels so old school. Like there wasn't a period like that. Whereas I think black and white for a while was like, oh, this is the old way of doing it. It's accepted, but this doesn't feel as fancy as the new color ones that are coming out. Anyway, what do I think of Forbidden Planet? I kind of agree with the assertion that it's a little bit dull in places, particularly in the first half, where it does a thing that a lot of 50s sci-fi does, where it kind of wants to like bask in showing off, like, this is the future, we have all this technology, but it's so kind of hokey, the technology, and simplistic, but they've put a lot of words into it to make it sound fancier, so it's actually kind of mind-numbing to hear them talk about it when it's less based on anything real. And I'm sure there's something they based it on, but like these days you watch a sci-fi movie set in like a spaceship or something, and even going back 10, 20, 30 years now, like the ideas of computers and the ideas of the different things that would be on a ship are something that can be related to modern technology, so it's very easy to see the leap from what we have to what's in the movie. I feel like here they're kind of like, it's impressive in some ways because they're kind of like, at one point someone brings up like someone's history, and it's like he puts in like a little memory card into a little handheld computer, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually quite cool that they kind of predicted that type of idea, that it would be a little screen and you'd read it off the screen. Yeah. In the 1950s, that actually is like super, whoa, that's like, imagine that in the future. But at the same time, like so much of it is like, like just gobbledygook and nonsense that doesn't really correlate to how we understand any of this stuff. And that's fine, but they do want to kind of bask in it a little bit, so it does make that first half feel a bit slow. And I will say as well, and again, I get that this is 10 years before Star Trek, the original series, but I actually think the amount of plot in this movie is about the same as the amount of plot in an episode of Star Trek. It just feels like the first half or so is padded out a lot more. Yeah. And so I was feeling that a little bit. Having said all that, I do think its main one or two very interesting ideas are indeed very interesting, and once it gets to those, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And in some ways, I wish they'd have done a bit more with one or two of them, and it's fleshed it out a little bit. But as it is, I do think the third act is a lot of fun and is the best part of the movie by far. Like it's like everything before that's kind of slow, it's kind of plodding, and it's like, I've seen a lot of Star Trek at this point, so like, because so many Star Trek episodes are, we're going to some colony where only a couple of people are living there, and I've not seen anyone in a long time, and what weird thing's been happening on the planet, and that weird thing will be different every time, but the basic setup that leads to it is usually pretty similar, and that's kind of what I was getting from a good chunk of this. Having said that, though, it does look good, like the map paintings and like the model of the ship and all that. And Robbie the Robot's obviously a very famous science fiction thing. I have to admit, I'm not necessarily in love with the design of Robbie the Robot. I like, he's the... Like, I will take the map paintings and the green sky, and I see more charm in that than I do the clunkiness of Robbie the Robot. Especially since, without getting into like anything that actually happens with him, I don't actually think Robbie factors that much into things as what you would think he would, based on how famous he is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we were talking about like, the technology and all that sort of stuff where it's like, oh, we got this stuff, whatever. I don't want to relate this to what is currently going on, but it feels like there is an equivalence of what they were trying to do with that AI actress like a couple months back. You remember that in the headlines?
I mean, vaguely. I didn't read up on it, to be honest.
I mean, this whole thing where it's just like, oh yeah, Robbie the robot. He's like, we're basically just selling this prop as a character within its own right. And it shows up in several TV shows, a couple of movies, and just treating it like it's an actual character. And I appreciate the effort, but in this movie specifically, there is nothing that pushes Robbie as the breakout thing that everyone should care about. I think that's all just marketing on the outside.
Yeah, because it doesn't really factor out much. Because I kept expecting, in the third act, he's going to do something that none of the humans can do, and that'll be like what he's been there for the whole time. And it never really comes. It never happens. Outside of his introduction, he doesn't really have that much to do, to be honest. So
no, I like him as a character in as much as he's featured. I don't think that he is annoying as a character. I don't think that he takes away from the core plot or anything like that. He does have a decent little, I won't call it a MacGuffin, but he has a place in the main plot himself. But yeah, he's just there as another character, essentially, not there as anything magnificent.
Yeah, I mean, the little thing that he's in the main plot for could easily be swapped out with anyone else. Like, it's not... Yeah. The fact that he's a robot is like, you could easily replace like that one little, like... I don't want to say contrivance, but the idea that, like... there's a reason... it doesn't... we'll get into spoilers. No. I don't want to talk about it.
It's 3 Lost stuff. But with the... What I like, though, about Robbie, and why I can see kind of stuck on, is... he does kind of, like, for me, embody the idea of the retrofuturism. Like, you can hear that he's running on tapes. Like, you can hear the tapes click over every time he needs to start a new thing. And I don't know, something about that's charming to me, but I don't know if it's charming to someone as a new release or if it's just me looking back 60 years later.
Honestly, impossible to say. I mean, obviously, I think these days, if you're going to like Robbie, it's because of how retro he looks and because of how, like, kind of cute that is.
Right.
Was this impressive to people in 1956? I have no idea. I really don't know. But, I mean, this is, 1956, most people had never seen a computer, so, like, maybe it was impressive.
True. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea of, like, we were just starting the computers. They were all running on tape. The idea is like, yes, this is where we're eventually headed to. In the year 2200, this clunky-ass tin can that runs on magnetic tape.
Yeah, can't wait for that. I'll get heading there any day now. Yep. The AI revolution is going to lead us to Robbie.
Oh, man, I can't wait. The other thing I want to bring up plot-wise, and I guess it also leads into characters if we want to talk about that briefly, but a lot of the first half of the movie is kind of dominated with this love triangle with the daughter character and people on the ships.
I think triangle's a little bit...
I see they're aiming for it, at least.
I don't want to say it's generous, because that makes it sound like it would be a good thing if it was a triangle, but it's not... I wouldn't really say it's a triangle. There's almost like there's one line halfway through that implies it was supposed to be a triangle in hindsight, but I never really felt that it was actually a triangle. Right. So it's it is what it is. But yeah, so much of the first half is about the fact that the main man they go to see, his daughter is an attractive young woman, and she's never seen another man before other than her father. So she's like, oh my, they're all so handsome. And immediately all the men are like, hello, little lady. Let's flirt with you and show you some things.
They literally say, as they're introducing themselves to the father, and she walks in, they're just like, look, you got to understand, we have like 15 men who have all been on a ship by themselves for like 9 months. We're going to ogle your daughter. Please understand that.
Yeah, which is one of the dated elements, actually, and that is that there's no women on the ship. Like, that's a very 1950s thing, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a few little things like that, actually. One, they keep calling the captain skipper, which I get that they're using boat terminology, but it just feels weird in a spaceship. Also, at one point, Leslie Nielsen actually says to the one female character, "You're dressing like a total slut. You're tempting everyone. You need to cover up." Like, all right, all right.
That's the forbidden part of this planet.
Let's calm down a little bit here, right? Rein it in a touch.
I mean, I would agree, but at the same time, every single other time that a male character interacts with her, except for the father character, it is just like, you ever make out with anyone before? You want to give it a shot? And they just go for it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to call bullshit in that, because they'd be doing that regardless of what she's dressed in. So Leslie Nielsen's character is a dick for even going down this line of thinking.
No. Yeah, I wasn't saying that in rebuttal to you. I was just saying, like, how whatever it is she's doing, they're also just being horn dogs on top of it.
Yes. So I it's just, I don't know, just some little things here or there, and they try and play it off like it's because he's also attracted to her, so he's acting out or something. I don't know. Very strange. But yeah, so a lot of the plot in the first half kind of revolves around that, and I suspect we're going to fly through that quite quickly when we talk about it. But yeah, there's some interesting mythology to the planet and stuff that the scientist character, who I've avoided saying the name of up until this point because I wanted to introduce him properly by saying it's Morbin time, because Dr. Morbius is the scientist who's been stationed on the planet.
I don't even know how that didn't cross my mind. At no point did that enter my mind.
As soon as they said his name the first time, I went, "It's Morbin time," and I.
I mean, you're right. He, to be fair, from what I know about Morbius, which is not a lot, I feel like the characters are close in how they behave. They both seem like stuck-up pricks who feel like they're better than everyone else. Wait, sorry, that's Jared Leto. I keep on getting too confused.
Yeah, I'll take this Morbius over Jared Leto Morbius any day of the week. Thank you very much. This guy's at least got a fantastic goatee that I can get behind and root for.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
one other thing I wanted to mention, if you want to get back into characters, we can, but I need to mention the soundtrack, the score.
Yeah, bit of theremin. It's a good soundtrack that doesn't know when to shut up. That's my biggest critique here. It sounds spacey. If you told me like this is the soundtrack to Forbidden Planet, I'd be like, yep, that's exactly what that sounds like. But it is playing throughout all of the romantic scenes. It's playing throughout like just random scenes where other people are talking. It doesn't know when to shut up, and it gets distracting at points. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's maybe a sign that the making this movie, they didn't trust to just have silence. They thought it would just feel hokey because, if there's silence, they'll realize we're not in a real place, we're on a set, or we've got a backdrop. We have to constantly be like tricking them with like the spooky sounds kind of thing.
I mean, fair, but like, come up with a romance theme. Come up with a military-esque sounding theme for when it's just the crew of the ship. I'm okay with this spooky theremin when you're showing me crazy stuff on the planet, but it doesn't work all the time.
Nah, that's fair. I guess my mind just kind of blocked it out after a while because it was so constant, which is in and of itself is a complaint. If I stop noticing the score because it never shuts up, then that's equally perhaps a problem. So that is worth mentioning. Honestly, there's not really any other characters I want to talk about because really it is just the captain, it is Dr. Morbius and his daughter Altara are the three characters that have any kind of thing. There's a couple other crewmen. There's a doctor and then another guy who get a little bit here, but I wouldn't say they have much character. They're just kind of, they fill their roles and that's about it.
The other guy, not the doctor, is the one that almost fills out the love triangle. And then the doctor's just kind of around up until the end of the movie to be another person that they can bounce ideas off of and talk to. Pretty
much. Also, there's the ship's cook who's always wearing like a cook's hat. Regardless of what scene he's in, he likes to drink booze. There you go. That's the characteristics.
That's the thing.
Of everyone.
Good on him.
So yeah, that's pretty much that. So we talked about how it's very pleasing to look at. So it's got that going for it, which is nice. There's some nice sets. Again, obviously, I'm not saying any of this looks realistic, but it looks good. It looks fun. It looks colorful. They really want to make use of the fact that they were shooting this in color and widescreen, all that stuff. It looks very, very pleasing still. All down to the fact that even the title screen, they've got this big, like long, stretched out 3D effect on the title. I mean, it's not like an actual 3D I mean, it's just a drawn thing, like from with a vanishing point. You know, someone's drawn it going all the way back, but it looks big and bold and pretty, and fits the pulpy sci-fi kind of feel that it's going for. It's a time capsule, as a historical piece of science fiction of like looking at how science fiction evolved throughout the years, and looking at this as kind of something that maybe led in some ways to Star Trek, which has led to other things. It's very important, and like it's hard not to notice. They have communicators, they have phasers. Effectively, they look different to the ones in Star Trek. They look a lot more cheesy here, actually, if anything. You know, like it's those basic ideas are there, and it's kind of fun seeing that. Does it hold up like amazingly as a movie? It doesn't. Like we said, there's parts where it does feel kind of dull. It feels like they're just kind of killing time and introducing things very slowly. But then there's actually genuinely cool ideas and some cool visuals in the last third, and that stuff I think does still work quite well.
Yeah. I think if you were getting like a spoiler-free synopsis where you're only saying to the things that are plot relevant, it is very relevant. It is something where it pulls up so many things that you're going to see repeated time and time again in Star Trek and all these other different sci-fi things. But if you get into the nitty-gritty and you say like, okay, well, here's this part where we spend an extended period of time showing these creatures on this planet and how they're friendly or whatever, which is really just showing off special effects work for the people who figured out how to do split screen here. That stuff is like, all right, well, it's dated. It has some issues. There's a couple of small things here, but it's not bad. I don't think at any point does it cross over into bad movie territory.
Yeah. But I think with all that said, it's probably time to get into the spoilers and talk about the film. So spoilers for Forbidden Planet, you have been warned. Now, I don't necessarily think I want to go through this in order, because I don't think that... I don't think a lot of the first half is interesting enough to try and go through that in order, really. I think it's maybe better to talk about the planet, the lore, everything that kind of the science was doing here, and then maybe dive into some specific things we want to get into about the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So, the big thing is, so this was meant to be a colony, and they're very surprised at the start that, hey, there's like no like city streets. There's no like, they expected the colony to have built up at least a town or something by now, and that's not there. What's going on? And when we find out from Dr. Morbius, once they get to meet him, is that, oh, everyone, like some mysterious force started killing the members of the colony, and even the ones who tried to leave on a ship, the ship was destroyed. But for some reason, I and my wife were like immune to whatever this thing was, but then my wife died a few months later, but she did give birth to a daughter, hence our other character, Altara, who's never met another human other than him. And it's like, okay, so that sets some things up. And then mysterious force attacks the ship that's invisible, which honestly, like, because I was getting a little bit bored, and then we get that cool POV shot of something going towards the ship, going past like the guards, and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of creepy. It's got kind of a cool vibe. This is interesting. We're doing something kind of neat. And upon questioning Dr. Morbius about what he knows about this planet, and like, is he up to something? Did he sabotage their equipment? Because that's what's happened with this invisible force. He then starts doing the info dumps, the lore of this planet. So, and there's a lot to it. It's basically this planet was the home of a species that existed for millions of years, and they've been dead. The Krell, yeah. And they've been dead for a few thousand years now, but they were super advanced, they were super smart, and they have all this technology, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I have been trying to translate these schematics, I've been trying to understand what all this stuff is, and I've been tinkering with it all, playing with some of the doohickeys, and I've been doing all this stuff. So, at this point in the movie, I think most people are probably thinking, well, this invisible force that's attacking the ship, especially since Morbius says at one point, oh, I think they might have, like, advanced beyond the need for a physical form. I'm like, well, is it like one of these aliens then that's attacking the ship? Is that, that's where your mind's maybe going at that point?
Like some ancient defense force or something like that they triggered.
Yeah. In actual fact, what it ends up being, because he talks about how he's actually increased his intelligence with this device that killed like the previous captain of the colony, but it made him smarter. He's been working with this thing that basically lets you create like a little hologram of like what's in your head. So he actually makes a little like 3D image of his daughter at one point when he's showing it off. Turns out, whenever he goes to sleep, his subconscious is making this invisible monster that's coming after the ship. And that's why, even back in the day, because they planted a seed earlier on, that the crew of the colony back then had voted to leave the planet and go back to Earth, and he was disappointed with that. And then all of a sudden, some mysterious force starts killing all the crew. Now, to be fair, Dr. Morbius has never intentionally done this. That's the whole point. It's his subconscious, right?
Yeah, they say it's the id monster. It's from
the id monster,
Freudian stuff. His id.
Yeah, it's doing it on its own accord, and now it's doing it again because they're starting to interfere and possibly suggesting they might have to take him home so he can testify about all the things that he's seen and done and why the colony's not here and why they're all dead. So it's okay, that's interesting, and I was like, these are cool ideas. And maybe the most cool is when the thing attacks them and they're waiting for it, and they've got the sort of electrical barrier fence up. And you get kind of the electrical lines making the sort of vague outline of what this monster's supposed to look like, and it's this. I don't know, honestly, if I was to compare it to a general shape or image based on what we see, you get the impression it probably has 4 legs and goes back the way, or technically it doesn't because they say the footprints are only just a biped.
Bipedal, yeah.
But it looks a little bit like the Tasmanian Devil to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
But big, really big though.
It reminded me of I'm gonna blank on his name now. It's in the movie Fantasia. There is a big demonic looking entity that's in one of the song tracks, and I can't remember his name now, but it reminds me of that. And to be fair, they do credit in the beginning that basically Disney lent them an animator to do this segment, and so it has a little bit of a Disney animation feel to it of the era.
It looks really good though. Honestly, for what they could do with 50s effects, and this is effectively just cartoon lines, making the vague outlines. Okay, we can't convincingly do a big, wild-looking monster, but if we just imply the vague outline of it with these electrical lines, it suddenly looks very intimidating and has a good sense of atmosphere to it.
That's what I was so impressed with the earlier sequence where it attacks them the first time, because you see the power grid or whatever freak out for a minute, and then they do a great job with the practical effects of the sand in this desert just sinks into the shape of these massive footprints, and it's not anywhere close to human. You see a long stretched out foot and then a single claw mark at the top. Yeah. And then as it's progressing, you see it's so heavy that it weighs down these steel steps as it's climbing up into the ship. And I'm like, if they were unable to do anything to show the monster, including the animation, this would be enough for me to sell this idea of this horrible invisible beast that is beyond comprehension, that we can't even imagine what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the sense of mystery, because we can't just see it, was really adding a lot to it. And because it basically comes to the ship 3 times. The first time is just to sabotage equipment, and we just get that cool POV shot of it as it goes past the guards, talking as if they can hear breathing, but they're not sure what it is. And it's that's kind of creepy. Then the second time is when we see the footprints, and it goes in and kills one person. Now, notably, they never show us this, but when they're telling the captain that this guy was killed, they say he's smeared all over the walls in the comms room, and I'm like, you know what? I get that a 1950s movie can't show that, but you're implying a pretty vicious crime scene there.
Oh, yeah. No, once we hit this section, once we hit the halfway point and it really starts getting into this, I could easily see this being remade into a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
A modern... I want to see both this remade into a horror movie, and then the same way that we had The Thing remake, I want to see the storyline of Morbius on this planet before everything else happened.
Okay. But yeah, and then the third time, of course, is when they're kind of waiting for it, and they've got all tons of lasers firing at it, and we see all these electrical sparks around it kind of forming the shape, and it picks up a couple of people and slams them to the ground, so a couple of people do die during that attack. So that's the spectacle of the movie, or those scenes, and the spectacle's quite good. And it teases some of these ideas. This example that there's animals here, there's a tiger and there's some deer, but they're actually very nice to the daughter. They sort of for some reason the daughter calms her, and I was kind of thinking, is this because it's also from his head?
Right. Well, no, they specifically said that the animals, I don't know if this is true, but the movie provided the explanation that the Krell actually have the technology and they traveled to Earth however many years ago, picked up some species and brought them back.
Morbius says that, but the fact that they treat the daughter differently made me think they were actually just projections from his mind.
Possible. So the explanation of what Morbius's actual powers are, the way he's able to do this, is that the machine, the technology progressed that it's basically able to beam matter and beam like energy and stuff to anywhere on the planet just based off of thought forms. That's how it's working.
Because the show, when he's explaining everything, and at one point Drebin says, hey, what's powering all these devices? He's like, funny you should ask. And takes him into basically this underground like network of tunnels and like little like train pods that go around. And it's like, this goes miles and miles deep. And there's like 1,000 nuclear reactors down here powering all this stuff. So basically, this is the thing that's actually beaming the creation out. It's like taking it from his head and beaming it out into the world. And he doesn't even know what's happening, right? It's not until he's confronted with it in the last little chunk of the movie where like Leslie Nielsen's trying to convince him of it. The daughter's kind of realizing it as well. And the big thing that happens is that the Doctor character runs off and uses the intellect machine, which they were warned would kill anyone that uses it. And like basically, Morbius just got lucky and it actually kind of worked on him. But he like uses the thing to increase his intellect. He gets the answer and says the monsters are from the head, and then he dies because he can't take the mental strain of all this brain power. But that's the linchpin that gets them onto the truth.
I also love the sequence when he is showing them the machine and he's like, I only survived it because I have an IQ of 184. And then the doc steps up and he's like, well, I should be okay because I have an IQ of 165. And I just imagine them standing there just jerking each other off, just like, whatever, fine, you're all so smart.
Yeah. And then the thing actually starts attacking them, including the Morbius himself at the end. That's the final chase. Because because the daughters decide to go with Frank Drebin on his spaceship, the Ed monster's like going into hyperdrive, coming after them to try and like stop this. Like his brain's like overstimulated.
Yeah, they keep on saying like every creature, no matter how intelligent they think they are, no matter how smart and overcoming their base primal instincts, it's still down there. It's still deep, and during whatever sort of emotional moments you have or whatever, that's when it comes out. So the idea that his daughter is leaving him, this beast is able to come out outside of normal sleep time or anything like that.
Yeah. So yeah, they get chased down into the alien technology room underground and all that, and this like super high tech door that's like super thick and nothing can, like the phasers can't melt it, but this demonic force is like breaking through to the point where like the Morbius is like, just shoot me, Captain. You'll have to take me out so this doesn't harm my daughter, kind of thing. And he does, of course, eventually die. Although, not before getting the self-destruct thing going. So it's like, by the way, the planet's going to explode in about 24 hours. You better get a move on.
Yeah, time to skedaddle. And he's like, what do you mean? We still had like 6 days to rebuild our ship. We're screwed.
Yeah. Which actually, that's something to go rewind a little bit and talk about, is the fact that to send a message back to Earth to get new orders, they have to like take apart a chunk of the ship to build a transmitter to do it.
Yeah.
That's very inefficient as far as their space travel program goes.
Yeah, I felt I was going to not bring that up because it feels like something where I just missed a throwaway line. I missed some line where it's like the planet's atmosphere isn't letting us blah 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 or whatever. But if you're also confused about it, then maybe it's just poor.
It felt like it was just, we're so far away that to get a new order we'd have to do all this, and I'm like, I feel like the first priority of like space travel outside of basic just one moving and like 2 life support, or arguably they're equal because you need both of them. Very next on the list is communication. Like being able to, even if it takes some time because you're far away, and that's fair enough, but like you would think they'd have a way of just beaming a message back, and it's like, okay, we need to wait 5 days for the response because it takes 2.5 days to get all the way back to Earth, and then so on. But
yeah, I just looked up how far away the star they're talking about is. It's apparently like 17 light years away. So obviously that means nothing in a post hyperdrive society. Like you can make stuff go faster than light, no big deal, but just curious.
Yeah, they say that at the start. They've got faster and light travel, so yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. And, didn't even mention Robbie all that much. Robbie greets them when they arrive, says hello, and, like, one of the points that's set up is that he can't harm any humans. They do question that, because when the first attack happens, they're like, oh, did that robot do it? And the reason why they rule him out is because the drunk cook was with him at the time of the murder on the second kind of like incident. And the reason why the drunk cook was with him is because Robbie's other ability outside of just lifting things and moving things around is that he can take any material or substance in one slot and then after that reproduce it, which is actually a lot of like the replicators on the Star Trek spaceship, interestingly. But Robbie like drinks some of this cook's booze and says, would you like 60 gallons of this whiskey? And he's like, yeah. So he sneaks out and there's like just like 100 bottles or whatever it is of this whiskey, and that's why they rule out the robots up to something, because the drunk chef was with him the entire time of the incident.
Yeah. I also want to point out that when they first meet Robbie, there's Robbie comes out. He's like deep voiced, like, hello, my name is Robbie. I am a robot. They entitled Robbie. I'm here to help you with whatever. And like everything he says and every way that he says it sounds super masculine in the way that it's happening. And then this drunk cook guy comes out and is like, so is that robot like a boy or a girl? And I'm like, why does it matter? A, but then B, Robbie comes back with like, that question is meaningless to me. And I'm like, fair enough. You're a robot. You're genderless. I can accept that. But like, what does this cook want to do? Why does it matter?
It's a good question. I guess my critique of Robbie is that if you took him out of this movie, would it actually change anything? Really?
I think it's good to have a red herring character. It's good to have a character that like we can expect is the one that is causing these things, but then isn't. I do think that they didn't lean hard enough into that. Like, as soon as the first attack happens, they're like, okay, well, it might be Robbie. And then immediately they're like, oh, nope, wasn't Robbie. He was out drinking with them, so it's got to be something else. And I think if they had just leaned more on that further into the movie, it also would have made the standoff towards the end where Robbie's been instructed not to let the captain or Doc go down into the lower tunnels. There's this whole idea of, is he going to break his protocol? Is he able to break his protocol and actually kill them? But then they immediately test it out and he's just like, no, I can disarm you, but like I still can't hurt you. And then the daughter comes up and is like, Robbie, let him in. And it's just done. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not important anymore.
Yeah, because the setup, Morbius sets up that Robbie will follow an order, even if it means the destruction of Robbie. He's like, hey, go stand in that beam that'll disintegrate you. And he's like, okay. And he walks towards it. He's like, no, cancel that order. See, he's completely self-serving. He'll follow my orders to a fault. Except, however, if I tell him to harm something, like someone. And yeah,
it's 3 laws. It's the Asimov's 3 laws of cannot harm a human, have to obey orders, protect your own existence, in that order.
Yes. So he points a phaser at Frank Drebin, and when he's told to fire it, he just starts like freaking out and malfunctioning because he can't compute it because it goes against his prime directives, if you to use a RoboCop term. And speaking of RoboCop, I was laughing during that scene a little bit because I was like, man, if this was Ed 209, he would be a puddle on the floor now after this demonstration.
I'd love that recut of just like, go ahead and aim the phaser at him. See, he can't do it. And then you just get a glimpse inside of Robbie, a new tape loading saying like reprogramming. And then it's like, oh, nope, he's going to shoot you. You're dead in 5 seconds. Sorry.
So there's that. And then the thing that we mentioned in the spoiler-free section, we haven't really talked about here, but so much of the first half or so of this movie is about the fact that the Dr. Morbius has a daughter. Altara comes out and immediately everyone's smitten, except, to be fair, Leslie Nielsen. He's kind of like keeping it professional, right? He's kind of keeping things whatever.
That's just to make the meat cute that much stronger later on, Pete.
Yeah, I know. The others are pulling the moves, and more importantly, when they're talking the next day, the third guy, right, not the doctor,
Jerry,
was that his name?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, fair enough. Jerry pulls her aside and they go off to like a spot. And it's like, honestly, this is kind of borderline creepy. The way he's like, yeah, on Earth, like, we men and women kiss each other. And she's like, kissing? What's kissing? Oh, it stimulates your whole body. I'd be happy to show you. I'm like, obviously she is, a woman, right? But
Yes.
the way he's talking to her sounds like he's talking to someone who is much, much younger because she
Yes.
doesn't know what kissing is.
That's the thing, is like, I don't care what her physical age is. Mentally, she seems like barely out of double digits, if even. And that makes this entire scene super weird.
Yes, and the captain catches him and he skedaddles quite quickly before he can even get really into trouble for it. And that's when Leslie Nielsen goes on his weird misogynistic tirade of like, you're tempting all the men with your slutty outfits. You should cover up more.
I mean, here's the thing. I can't remember if it was this sequence or the sequence where he confronts her while she's swimming, but she specifically says the line of like, oh, well, we were just kissing or whatever. Would you like to try it? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And she's like, oh yeah, all the other guys have. And I'm like, this is, if I thought Jerry was creepy, this is now 100 times worse.
Yeah, I think that part about all the other guys have was, when he goes by like the next day and she's in the swimming area and she's supposedly naked, although when she gets out of the water, you can kind of clearly see she's got like a weird like skin toned like outfit on. And
that wasn't even out of the water. I saw that while she was in the water. I'm like, so she has a bikini on. Okay, fair enough.
But it's got like a lot more like, you would think it would just be a bikini or maybe like a skin tight like catsuit, but it had like frilly parts. I'm like
yeah,
you're not fooling anyone with this. What are you doing?
I don't know.
But yeah,
maybe that's part of her skin. Like, she is technically on an alien planet. Maybe that's part of just like, oh, my mutations growing up here.
But yeah, she puts on this more kind of, this white dress that she's had Robbie make for her, and it's a bit more covering up. And she's like, "Do you like my dress?" And like somehow within about 30 seconds, he's kissing her, and I was like, okay, I guess this is a romance now between these two. Even though like that's the thing, I don't really feel the romance all that much. Like I get why she would be kind of like, oh, I've never seen anyone before. Here's all these men, and some of them seem quite confident, and this is the captain, he's in charge. I can see why that power would be kind of alluring. And on a pure like, oh, we've all been stuck in a ship, like we're all horny as hell kind of idea, I see why the men would all be into her. But as an actual romance, as like, oh, these two care about each other now, and there's feelings developing, I don't think the movie really convinces me of that with any of these scenes.
I think that it's also kind of victim to its own pacing here, because this sequence, the swimming pool stuff and the romance, quote unquote, building, happens after the first attack. It happens after like their instruments are broken and stuff like that. And it happens immediately before they're brought down and given the massive exposition dump of like, here's all this stuff about the planet and all this crazy stuff. So immediately we get into the parts of the movie that are cool and interesting and very like driving the plot forward. So the moment that this romance starts, it's the least interesting thing in the movie. So it's just easy to say like, all right, well, fine, make out with her. Who cares? Whatever. Let's continue on with the rest of this.
And arguably it was already the least interesting thing in the movie. It's just that now we actually have interesting things to compare it to. So it's now even worse by comparison. Exactly. Because then we're getting into all the science fiction ideas that make it cool and unique, and like, oh, this idea of a civilization that's long gone, but their technology's letting us do this, and that's leading to this, like all, and then the horror aspect of the creature itself, like all that's super exciting. So when we do return to like Leslie Nielsen like going to her towards the end, goes, Altara, you must come with us. And she's like, oh, but I can't. And it's not, and honestly, her mind changes so quickly, because as soon as Morbius is like a little bit, I don't know, aloof about the fact that more men have died, she's like, oh, you've just made my decision for me. I'm going with you, Frank Drebin of Police Squad.
I mean, you're right. It is. And from that point on, like, she's not even a part of the plot, but I think that she had to make that decision at that point to trigger the third act. Like, it had to happen there, which you're talking about Robbie the Robot being dispensable in this plot. I'd argue she is too. I think that the daughter is 100%. You replace all of this driving motivation of like the father wanting to like protect his daughter or whatever, with a more selfish desire of not giving up this planet and not being brought to like pay for his crimes. And I think all of this plays exactly the same.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair point. The reason why I never said about her, though, is because unlike Robbie, she gets a lot of screen time, right?
True.
That's the difference. I mean, I think you're right. Like, I think you could easily swap out a lot of this romance stuff with just this idea of him being obsessed and maybe get to the cooler ideas a little bit quicker because we'll be there quicker. But, yeah, I mean, at the very least, yes, that idea that, like, his Ed goes into, like, super drive because the idea that his daughter's going to leave him does make sense, at least, and does obviously drive that final chunk of the third act. But it's, you know, that's about it.
And then I think the only other part of it that's really worth mentioning for Robbie that kind of drives it home is that for the last bit, once Drebin realizes, and I know that's not his name, but you got me on it now. Once Drebin realizes that the whole like id monster thing and it's coming from his mind and all that, it takes a really long time to convince Morbius that that's the truth. Like, he doesn't want to believe it. He is dead set on like, no, it's got to be some other thing. It can't be me, blah, blah, blah. The thing that I wouldn't say does all the convincing, but is a good indicator for the audience is that with the pre-establishment that Robbie will not shoot a human, will not harm a human, when Morbius directs him, says, shoot the monster, shoot it now, it being the subconscious part of Morbius, Robbie is unable to follow directions and he freezes up in the same way that he did before. So I like that just as a little twist, a little touch to show like, we set this up before, we reminded you of it just like a couple minutes ago, and now it's paying off.
I guess that's mainly to prove to Morbius that it is coming from him, that it's part of a human that this thing's coming from. So, okay, like, I kind of get that purpose, I suppose. You know, I think the part of the problem is, though, is that his idea of like him wanting all this for himself is probably the least interesting part of the sci-fi stuff, because, you know, there's that part in the movie where he's already shown them some of the stuff and he's basically saying, look, I should be left here to be in charge of this on my own and not answer to anyone, and the only thing guiding me will be my own conscience. And, of course, Frank Drebin of Starfleet Police Squad says, no, we're never going to let you do that. This is far too big for one person to have a monopoly on and have complete control over. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Morbius is right when he says human beings aren't ready for all this, but hey, that includes you.
But
bitch.
He is an IQ of 184, and it's only gone up since then.
Yeah, but only because he's juicing. He's been juicing with the alien device.
True, very true. But that, you know,
performance,
a world record, even if steroids were involved. Performance
enhancing brain juice, if you will. Yeah. So that idea, like that debate, is like I think that's the problem with this character maybe a little bit, is that him thinking he should have that level of control and that they'll just all leave him alone is so obviously delusional, and like clearly no one's going to let that ride. Like, in no world would anyone let that ride in any context. Like, you take all the sci-fi stuff away, if you just put it on Earth and like some scientist has discovered, oh, I can build a new type of bomb, you think the military and like the government's just going to be like, yeah, we'll just let this guy like work with it on his own, there's no reason for us to have any oversight here, like, just go for it.
I think I'm okay with the idea of it. I like the idea of someone believing themselves to be so in control and so much better than everyone else that they are the only ones who deserve this right. But I also don't think that we properly saw that demonstrated in the movie. I think that the character kept saying he was so smart, kept saying that he's this best, but all we really got to show for it is the Robbie the robot being built, a couple of things in his house that look a bit fancy, and that's it. And frankly, time is only doing him dirtier from our viewpoint, because like Robbie's not that impressive anymore. He's not like, it seems like, oh yes, I built this thing, and all I'm thinking is like, yeah, what, in the desert with a box of scraps? Like, it's not that impressive anymore.
Yeah, like, because I really like the idea of the mythology of what this species was and all this technology, and I love the idea of the invisible enemy coming towards the ship, and I that's the part I wish there was more of. I wish there was, like, Act 1 should have had the first encounter of that, and it should have been an ongoing thing of like, oh, we keep getting worried that it might come back tonight, like, you know.
No, this is an alien movie. Like, this is, if you on paper, this can easily be an alien horror style movie of you come across this dead culture, this horrible beast is seemingly revived from the dead, and now you have no chance of being able to stop it. And
you can still have the reveal that it's actually just coming from this guy's mind. It's all his head. And there's the tease early on that he said he had a dream, like a premonition of like, what might happen next. And that's the point where you're like, that seems like it's setting something up there. I've got a sneaking suspicion it's foreshadowing some stuff. But I mean, I don't want to sound too harsh though, because when I'm critiquing parts of this, like, I do think that compared to like movies that I go back and revisit more, it is enough on the slow side for the first half. Like I was like feeling it as I was watching it, where I'm like, oh, you know, this romance stuff is feeling really old school and cheesy, and like it feels like it's not really like, you know, it has the weight of like that guest star in an episode of Star Trek who Kirk's going to flirt with, and that's all it is. So when it got to the more interesting stuff in the back half, I was like, oh, you know what? No, like there is some really good stuff still in here. It just like is hidden behind some of the more what feels really typical stuff by today's standards. So
yeah,
you know, there's stuff there to enjoy, and it's obviously a piece of sci-fi history, but it's not like something that holds up immaculately, like, you know, just a couple of decades later, like an Alien, which is still a masterpiece today as it was then.
We kind of glossed over it a little bit. I mentioned in the beginning, I do want to just call out specifics on like the special effects that they use. The monster notwithstanding, because we already said that was great. I also liked not the whole intro sequence. There is a lot of just this flying saucer going around in space, which is fine. It's not bad for what it is. There's a whole like landing sequence that, it's got map paintings on it. It looks good and all that. What I really liked is there is a shot of, I guess, just the map painting, but so much of real like miniature work is done where you just see this little dust cloud moving across the desert, like seemingly in the distance, and that's to show like Robbie just like speeding along and meeting them as they arrive. And it's such a tiny little touch, but I love the way that they portrayed it, and it still looks very good. It
was very Crypto coming through the snow from the start of Superman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to put it more in the sci-fi realm of the time, obviously still separated by like 20 years, but it reminds me of those shots of Luke on the speeder in like New Hope.
Oh, sure.
Of just showing that. But obviously this is older, much more scaled down style of that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, David, what are you rating Forbidden Planet out of 10?
I think it's good in the overall sense. There are bits of it that I don't really want to sit through again, but if I'm looking at this from like a cultural impact and all that sort of stuff, I have to recognize that it's also great in that viewpoint as well. I think I'm going to come down on this at almost an 8. I'm going to say 7.5, but it's like as close to an 8 as I can muster without me actually wanting to put it in the 8 category.
Yeah. I'm going with a 7. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'm still saying it's good. I think the back half has got a lot of cool, interesting ideas in it. Some fun sequences. I do think that first half is just a bit of a slog to get through, though, and I cannot, in good conscience, say it's close to being great as a result of that. Obviously, it's important historically. I'm not disputing that, but to watch it now, I do think there's a couple of asterisks and caveats that you should probably know going in and sort of be prepared for and whatever. Especially if you're going to sit and like properly pay attention to it, give it your full attention. That's where the first half's going to drag a little bit.
Honestly, I feel like you could improve the viewing experience of this movie so much if you skip like the first probably even like 10 minutes, and all you would need to know is Robbie the robot and the ship is out in the middle of the desert. And if you open with them in the room with Morbius, I feel like that'd be fine.
Yeah, you're way overshooting that, though. I'm pretty sure 10 minutes would just cut out the stuff of them on the ship before they land, which is definitely stuff you could cut.
Yeah. Let me see when they get into the living room. 15 minutes. Fair enough.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I do like the touch that all the doors in the underground area, because it was built for the aliens, are all really wide. It kind of gives you an idea of like the weird shape they might have had without ever showing them.
And they say like, oh, the mental machine, the thing that allows you to jack in, is like, yeah, you can see this thing was built for a significantly larger sized head than any human would normally have.
Yeah, those are fun little details. So some good ideas there. But yeah, so yeah, that is our thoughts on Forbidden Planet. And next time on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, we're returning to a franchise that needs to be continued. And that is Universal Soldier, because we're finally past the direct-to-TV movies that were made, and we're going to Universal Soldier: The Return, which sees the return of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and also Goldberg, the wrestler, is in it.
Great. Love it.
Like, the upside is I think this is like 80 minutes long, right? It's a short movie.
All right.
So
I'll take the small victories, but I could also just take a 0 minute we never go back to Universal Soldier, because like, why? What are they getting anything out of this? Is this a tax break movie?
Look, we have to finish the fight, okay?
All right.
That's just the way it is.
I'm sure eventually we'll get to the Highlander series and we're going to be having this exact same conversation.
Yeah.
Just movie after movie.
Yeah, but the difference is, though, is Highlander's got a new movie coming out, so we actually have to be kind of like up to date for that and be well versed. There's no reason why we have to do the Universal Soldier films other than just we started them, so we're going to finish them.
So you say that, but eventually somebody's going to realize they're sitting on those IP rights, and he's going to be like, wait a minute. We're going to cash a nostalgia sequel. Here we go.
Anyway, David's got his homework movie in just a second, but let me tell you about Patreon just before that. Patreon or YouTube membership, either one is good. You get access to the bonus rate and rundown segments for each episode, bonuses for the other shows we do as well, like Collector's Cut. Go check out that. It's the other movie podcast me and David do, where we do franchises and we do seasons of movies, like thrillers or disaster movies, whatever it might be. But of course, you get access to a show that we do once a month on Patreon, and that is called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. So if that sounds like fun, you can go check out that. But yes, every week David goes back and watches a movie we did on the Ace before he joined, so he can eventually be caught up and have seen them all. David, what was this week's homework movie?
Well, I decided I want to stick in the 50s, keep the retro vibe going, so I went all the way back to the beginning. I did The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Ah.
Yep. That was, for anybody who didn't know, the very first episode. That was you and Tara coming in. And boy, howdy, you guys gave that one some high ratings. You gave it a 9. She gave it a 10. I went into that like, well, I'm about to have my pants blown off here by how incredible this movie is.
Oh, does that mean you're about to be all negative and be like,
I'm not going to be all negative. I will say I can understand the 9 to an extent. I can't understand the 10. For me,
I mean, I agree. She overshot it. It was for episode 1. She blew her load. That's just be clear here.
Fair enough. For me, this sits in the category right next to Forbidden Planet. For me, this sits like just off to the side of it of better. Like it is, I think, a superior film, but it still has long segments where I think it's dragging a little bit. I appreciate the importance of it in like cinema history. I appreciate like the stylistic of it. I do think that it does lean a bit closer into the B movie feeling, but strangely enough, because this was made in 51, I almost don't think that those tropes were solidified yet. So it feels like it's almost exempt from it.
Yeah. Also, I think it has more to say, which I think takes it out of B movie territory quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is once we hit the ending and even throughout the movie, it does have a very clear like message that it's trying to give, and it's saying this larger overarching theme, which, I mean, it's not really a spoiler to say it was made in the middle of the Cold War. It's basically humans stop trying to kill each other. Like, what are you doing? So I appreciate the larger message there, and I do like, the way it wraps up, the way it ends, all that stuff is good. I think it's just an issue where once I feel like I have a grip on the movie, it only throws maybe 1 or 2 things that kind of shake it up in a way I wasn't expecting. A lot of it feels like exactly what I was expecting going into it. And obviously that's another issue for it defined the tropes, so therefore it like that. The reason I'm expecting it is because it was so successful the first time around. So I don't know. It's a hard square there, but I think I enjoyed it. I don't regret watching it. I would say this one probably does make it into the 8 territory, but I don't think I can go higher than that. I think it is just going to stick at the 8 for me. Okay.
All right. I mean, it's a classic. I think out of the 50 sci-fi movies, I think it's the best one that I've seen. Mm-hmm. But yeah, maybe we'll discover another one that I think is better. I doubt it, honestly, because I feel like they tend to be a little cheesier than what I like from sci-fi. Right. Well, I like the cheesy ones, but I prefer the more serious, more modern stuff.
It's the weird aspect of it where, like, just recently I did Invisible Man as...
Oh yeah, that was great.
And that was 30s, and I enjoyed that one significantly more than I enjoyed the Day the Earth Stood Still. So, no, I think there is the opportunity to do better. I just don't know if this is the thing where it's like, there's that period in the early 2000s where everything is washed out and gray and horrible looking. Maybe the cheesiness is just an aspect of the 50s we just got to deal with.
Yeah. But there you go. That is the show, everyone. That is the Atomic Cinema Experiment. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. We'll see you next week for Universal Soldier: The Return, which is the 4th one in the franchise for anyone keeping track.
You can skip the other 2, I'm sure.
Yeah, but there's the show. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.